In this video, we're going to talk about how we can run code repeatedly using something in R called loops. So why do we want to run code over and over again? Well, we might want to run some code that processes every element of a vector. Rather than having to write out that code for every element, we could just write out the code once and using this thing called a loop, tell it to run on every element of that vector. We might also have a situation where we want to repeat a calculation with different parameters. So we could write the code for the calculation once and then use a loop to iterate over those different values of those parameters. We can also just repeatedly run code until we get to a state that we want to finish the loop at. So in R, the most common way to write a loop is as a for loop. You can see that in this example here. We have this keyword called for. We can't use it in R for anything else other than for running these types of loops. And after the word for, then we have parentheses, and then we have this syntax where we say I in some series of values. I can be, you can call this anything, you don't have to call it I. This is essentially the name of a new variable that is going to be created and updated every iteration of this loop. And then after this keyword in, we have the values that we want to loop over. So here, what we're going to do is we're going to run this loop 5 times because 1:5 creates a vector of 5 numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So the loop will run for each one of those 5 values, and in each iteration of the loop, I will equal the corresponding value from those 5 numbers. So in the first loop, it will equal 1. In the second loop, I will equal 2. In the third loop, I will equal 3, and so on. Then we have a pair of curly brackets, like you see here. And we put the code that we want to run in every iteration of the loop inside those curly brackets. We can have as many lines of code as we want. Here we only have 1 line of code, just for a simple example. And we can use the variable we're creating as part of the loop within that code. So here we're saying print out the variable I, and we already said that I is going to be that variable that's updated with each one of these 5 numbers. And we can see, sure enough, when we run that code, in the first iteration of the loop, it prints out I, which is 1. In the second iteration, it prints out I, which is now 2, and so forth, all the way up to the 5th loop where I is now 5, it gets printed out, and then the loop ends. So here's a more complicated example where we're iterating over this vector of scores. We have the same syntax. We say for score in scores, right? So we're going to iterate over these the 5 numbers in the scores vector, and in each iteration of the loop, we're going to assign that value from scores to this variable in the loop called score. Then our code is going to multiply whatever score is by 1.1, which effectively adds 10%, and then prints out that value. So you can see in the first iteration, score is set to be 92. We multiply that by 1.1 to get 101.2, and so forth for the remaining 4 loops. So loops are very useful, but you should also be aware that you don't always want to use them in R. R will actually run a lot faster when conducting operations on a vector if you can use a vectorized version of that operation. What I mean by this is that essentially you would pass the vector to a function that does that operation. And what a vectorized operation does is it operates upon multiple values in the vector at the same time. So rather than having to process each item in the vector one by one, which will take as long as there are items in the vector. A vectorized operation can process multiple items at once and get through the vector a lot faster. So here we see a variant of the code we had on the previous slide, where we're multiplying the scores vector by 1.1, right? And then here we're modifying it to assign the new values to this new vector called bonus. We're assigning them by using the indexing structure to add them a particular position in the bonus vector, and we get the same numbers that we got on the previous slide. But we could do the same thing just by taking the original scores vector and just multiplying it by 1.1. And the multiplication operation here is vectorized. So R will conduct this very efficiently in this format and multiply all the numbers in this vector at the same time by 1.1 rather than having to do each of the 5 numbers one by one.